Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing D.E.I. Divide at Impera from Ludus Magnus Studios. D.E.I. is an area control game for 1 to 4 players, I believe 1 to 4 players, 2 to 4 players with this. There is a solo mode expansion, I have not played that. I plan on playing it though, we'll talk about that later. But D.E.I. Divide at Impera is a area control game from Ludus Magnus Studios for 2 to 4 players, which means I'm repeating myself at this point, but it is what it is. This game is, let's see how we can dive into this. This is an area control game. It plays across 4 rounds, and the goal is to get as many points as possible. You're going to be getting points through a variety of things, all tracked on this goal card over here, this sheet over here. It's going to track the goals you have, which I haven't played them out over here, but you can have these cards you're playing onto various areas that represent the goals you're trying to achieve, but it also has the endgame scoring criteria that you can be getting as well, which can certainly add up to a lot of points. See, in the game, you're going to be getting points for a few things. You're going to be getting points for each base you control at the end of the game. The bases are going to be these areas over here. You're going to get points for unlocking abilities. Effectively, you're going to be drafting ability cards at the beginning of the game, ability tiles, and the more of them you unlock, we'll get into that later, but the more of them you unlock, you get 1, 3, or 6 points. You get points for resources, that's these two areas here, and then lastly, you get points for the cards themselves, which can absolutely be a lot of points in the game. The cards can be, I would say the cards and the goals are the 2 biggest chunks of points you have in the game. Which brings us to the goals. The goals over here are going to be one of the big chunks of points you have. You can set up this board at the beginning over here, and then every round you have different goals to go for. Now, I'm not going to heavily get into some of the nuances around the scoring, but the general idea is you have 4 rounds of play, and in each round you're going to score one of the columns, and depending on when you score them, you score either more or less points, but you're picking something that works for you. I mean, this is a game in terms of what you're trying to do every game, every round, depends on the scoring cards you have in play. Sometimes you're trying to make sure that you have tons of control over the blue bases in the game, because if you do, you can score 3 points for each base you control, and there's 4 of them. That could be 12 points in a single round, which is awesome. Or maybe you get points for having every 3 of your units on the board. If you have all 15 of your units, that could be 15 points in a single round. Again, a chunk of points in a game that goes to somewhere between, I don't know, 45 to 80 points. Getting 15 points in a single round is a big deal. And so you're trying to be mindful of the scoring goals and the fact that every round you're scoring one of those columns. Which column you have some freedom over. We're not going to heavily get into that. It's the only really confusing part of the game. But there's some degree of, how you can go through those columns and score those points. Combine that with the cards you're building out. This game is going to have a lot of building out a hand. You're going to start with a hand of cards. You can use those cards to drive your actions, but you can also upgrade those cards from various card markets in the game, all of them breaking the game, breaking the systems at play here, and those are going to give you chunks of points as well. If you're getting 2 to 4 points from the various cards you draft, and you buy 5 or 6 cards in the game, well, you can get 6, you can get 18, 20, 25 points from your cards at the end of the game, which can absolutely be the difference between winning or losing. Plus the other things that give you points. And so that's what's going on. You're trying to get points. But getting points often requires a degree of area control. Not everything on that board has area control, but a lot of them have overlap with area control. Getting resources, getting placement on bases, having positioning in bases, getting your units on the board, all those things are designed to help give you area control and get in the way of your opponents, which is where we get to the actual card selection, how you actually play the game. The game's going to have 4 rounds of play, and in every single round you're going to be taking 6 actions. We're going to illustrate that nicely on this little board over here. You're going to be playing cards into these actions. When it's your turn, you pick a card, you play it down, you pick another card, you play it down, you take the actions on those 2 cards. The next player takes their turn, rinse and repeat again in step 2, then in step 3 again, and that represents a round of play. So 6 cards total across 4 rounds, that's 24 plays, but the cards themselves have multiple actions on them, as you can see over here. Over here we have a move and collect. Over here we have a double move. Over here we have a spawn and a move. Different cards will have different symbols on them, usually involving the most common 3 are going to be moving, collecting, and spawning. There's not a lot of killing in this game, and you're going to be moving, collecting, and spawning, but occasionally we're doing things like moving your drone. Every faction has influence over a drone. Now, to be very clear, the drones here do not belong to any one player. These drones are all here to kind of mess with everyone, but you do have more influence over them as a faction related to that drone, because you start with a card that can control them, as opposed to other players that will have to buy cards from the various markets that control them instead. So you have a little more influence whether you're trying to use a transporter drone, a resource drone, or a death strike drone. Those are not the actual names, those are just what I think of them as. But anyway, so you're playing cards through that board, you're taking the actions, and you're slowly putting out people onto the map, so that it's spawning more units, spreading them around, taking control of various areas, and more importantly, taking control of bases. And the reason you want bases is twofold. Well, threefold, I guess. First of all is many of the goals involve bases. Like you can see over here on this track over here, this goal wants you to have a presence in each red base. This goal over here wants you to have control over every red base, and those will give you points for achieving those goals. So looking at where the red bases are and spawning into the initial spawn points on the board and trying to figure out the best, most efficient way to get to those bases is key in terms of finding out your strategy. But also, as you get to the end of round 2 over here, at the end of round 2, you're going to unlock the various goals you have. You see, you're going to start the game with different resource tiles, different ability tiles that begin the game face down, but if you control 2 bases of that color at the end of round 2, you get to go ahead and flip it. So controlling those red bases is key because you can go ahead and flip your tile that now gives you the ability that over here you can potentially harvest whenever you don't have a majority in an area. You can turn your harvest symbols into kill symbols and slowly take out your opponent and get majority in an area. So you have tons of ability tiles that will break the game, and you unlock them by having control of 2 bases of that color at the end of step 2. At the end of step 3 is where you score. Now I do want to note, those all happen at the end of your turn, not the end of a collective step 2, at the end of your turn, which means on my turn I can get 2 blue bases and unlock my blue ability. And then on your turn you can sweep control of it from me and still unlock your blue ability. This game does force you to take into account the area control, but it lets you have the freedom to manage it on your turn. You only care about the end of the game state, including endgame scoring, only matters at the end of your turn. So again, you play 2 cards, you go ahead and take the action of those cards, putting people out, spawning them, moving them around the board. Then you play 2 more cards, you check to see if you've unlocked any abilities, then you play 2 more cards, and then from there, you're going to score one of the goals over there. Now the way you can buy new cards in the game is you can play a card face down. So whenever you want over here, you're going to gather a card, play a card face down onto this board. By playing a card face down, you effectively give up that card action, but in exchange, you're going to buy a card from one of these markets. Perhaps I buy this card, paying the resources shown. Those triangles are going to be the purple resources, which can only be found on rooftops, and the yellows, the circles, are going to be the yellow resources, which are much easier to get, but less cool. When you gather that card, you can immediately play it on the next round, or even in the current round if you want, giving you the freedom to upgrade a card that will give you points. The other card will go away. You can put it in your little trash pile, but you're going to get the card, a better card that's stronger that you can use the same round and will give you points. But you do have to give up a play to get that card, unless you have my favorite ability, which allows you to spend a resource instead of giving up a play, which I love. But past that, you're trying to get those resources to get more cards, to get a more powerful engine, which means you care about all aspects of control in the game because you can't harvest resources unless you have control of an area. You can't even move unless you are going to have control or get control through the process of moving, which means a single grouping of a bunch of units in an area can absolutely prevent you from moving into that area if you will not have the opportunity to get control there. You want to stop players from doing things, just have more units than them. It will get in their way of accomplishing their abilities. Now you may have noticed, and I briefly talked about, the level of the game over here has multiple levels over here. This is a game that has literally, well, it has 3 levels technically, but you only care about 2 of them as you play through this. There's going to be the ground level and then the elevated area. And you're going to be getting to the elevated area through something called elevators that are actually just seem like grappling hooks. Generally, through this game, whenever you have a grappling hook area, you can move from that area up to the adjacent area in order to start harvesting those resources, which works great when you have an area here that just pops you straight up. It doesn't work quite as well when you're in an area over here that doesn't want you to pop straight up, which is where you come into play the fact that you can have buildings in the game. You can move into this area with one of your units. You can spawn him, spawn him in the starting area here. There's 2 starting areas in each map. Move him into here, and then go ahead and build your own elevator for you. That's your own elevator, your own faction elevator that other players can't access in the game, that's going to allow you to pop up over here when other players cannot go up or down that area. And so you're building buildings and structures, whether it's the elevators, which are super important, or alternatively it's the camps. You see, right now, on this board over here, we have 2 camp areas you can spawn in, which is great, but this entire half of the board does not have any camp areas, which means if somebody can go ahead and move some of their units all the way down here, and then go ahead and build a camp token, well, they can now spawn units here. Camp's going to be the second of the types of structures in the game, and they're going to allow you to build units where you otherwise couldn't. So instead of having to spend all this movement to move around the board, you can instead build units there and start spawning and harvesting and taking control of bases. Speaking of which, when you take control of this base, you'll take this and put it onto your player board to show you have control of a red base, and other players who take that base from you will take it from you, or if there's an even amount of players, then it will return to the game, to the board. The last structure we have over here is a bridge. Bridges, as you might imagine, are bridges. They connect areas. You can take a bridge, and if you're trying to get get from here to here across this area, you can build a bridge so you can gather this resource, move over here, gather this resource, and then maybe build an elevator and start popping down over here. You have that flexibility to create the land structures around you, to create the board as you move through it. Effectively, you are spawning units, moving units, building bases, building elevators, and building bridges, all designed to figure out what is the puzzle that is the most rewarding to you to get the area control that you need in this game. And along the way, you are buying cards. We talked briefly about the card market, but the card markets not only require resources, but additionally the card markets require control of certain bases. To buy from the blue card market, if you want the level 2 or 3 cards, you need to have control of a base. Same with the green and the red, you need to have additional control of bases. You want those premium goods, you have to have more influence in that faction. Or the generic card market has cheaper cards at the far right, and then slowly normal cost cards and more expensive cards at the far left. So that's going to be a typical sliding market. You don't need to have control of bases, but you might be paying a premium price or getting things at a discount if it's been sitting there for too long. And that's basically what's happening in the game. Across 4 rounds of play, you're going to be playing cards 2 at a time. You're going to be trying to upgrade your deck because cooler actions and more points. You're going to be moving around the board trying to shift and wrestle control from other players as you create the game state through the process of establishing different buildings in the map that change the way the game plays, buying cards that break all the rules, having your asymmetric factions that give you your own ability as far as what you can do, like that leader who can just pop up and down without requiring elevators at all, having the ability to break the game in different ways. That is effectively what you're doing as you play through D.E.I. Ultimately, your goal is to get as many points as possible. How you achieve that goal often requires units because baddies get in the way, but it doesn't necessarily require a ton of units. It requires the right use of your cards to move, to position, to grow, to develop, to do everything you need to get the right goals, to get the right points, to establish control, to stop your opponents from getting their points. Even though this game is very kind in the sense that you get things at the end of your turn, not a collective round, you can still get in your opponent's way. And if they have more points than you, they win. So getting in their way is a good thing in this game. And that's how you play D.E.I, Divide et Impera. Go through the game, play cards, rinse and repeat across 4 rounds, with a bit of nuance as far as how it actually works past that. And drones. We haven't covered drones. Let's cover drones briefly over there. Drones all have their own unique ability. So, for example, this drone likes to walk around the board killing people. This drone over here likes to walk around harvesting resources, and these drones don't have to worry about going up or down elevators. They can just pop down across the board, grab 2 resources, and get you what you need much more quickly and efficiently. There's going to be 4 drones in the base game, each corresponding to 1 faction. You're going to have the drones in play of the factions that are in play, but again, anyone can control the drones. And there are drones that teleport, there are drones that spawn units, there are drones that gather resources, and there are drones that kill, and that's in the base game, not accounting for any of the expansions. Speaking of which, this is just a review of the base game, not a review of any of the expansions. And with that, speaking of review, let's go ahead and dive into the review, starting with the ease of play. The ease of play on this game is really solid. The rulebook is pretty easy to understand, pretty short as far as things go, but more importantly, what really impressed me is one of my friends who was playing this game for the first time kind of read the reference sheet that you got, and then between the reference sheet and the maybe 3 minutes of explanation, understood what was going on. He understood. Now, he plays a lot of air control games, take that into account, but he was able to dive straight into a game with literally not a proper rules explanation. It was like, here's a reference sheet and a few questions, and he was able to play the game, which was very impressive to me. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, he wasn't running the game, but I was very impressed by that. The game is fairly easy to understand, fairly easy to pick up and play, plays in around 90 minutes, that can vary a bit up or down depending on player count, as well as, the analysis process of the players in play, because there is a lot to think about in this game, but that is basically around 90 minutes and overall easy to table and teach and all that stuff. As far as what I like, don't like, and conceal as not liking, and get prepared for a long list on all of these categories. Well, it's not entirely true. Get prepared for a long list of what I like and a long list of what I can see others not liking, but not so much of a long list of what I don't personally like. I like this game a lot. If you've watched some of my other videos, my other content, you've probably seen this game show up in some lists, maybe a short or two. I have been really enjoying this game. It is... Every year has a few games that stand out as the smash hits to me, the games that really resonate with me, and this is very much in that category. Before we even bother diving into what I like, understand that I am loving what D.E.I, what Divide et Impera is doing, and I'm loving the puzzle at play, and it's because it does everything that I like in games. This game has a ton of strategic depth, but most importantly, it is about the puzzle. It's about seeing different elements that all coalesce into a single thing where your goal is to get as many points as possible, but you're trying to manage asymmetric abilities, and you're trying to manage player powers and cards and the drones in play and just the general action card. Everything you do is about trying to find the pattern that is going to get you the points. There's a ton of things going on that are just fun for me. I like asymmetric stuff in games. I like the factions in the game. I like their asymmetric decks and their asymmetric player powers. I like the fact that you have 4 different card markets, all of them breaking the rules in different ways as far as what you do. I love the different terrain elements going on here as far as the dual layer terrain. That's something that this game does incredibly well as far as just It lets you build around 2 levels of a game, trying to focus on whether you go for those harder to get areas, but they have higher rewards, they have bases that won't be fought over quite as much. I love the ability tiles. There's ability tiles. You can be drafting these at the beginning of the game, and there's a chunk of abilities, and the way you combine them, again, gives you more ways to break the game. This game just gives you a lot of fun things to play with, and it does so in a way that doesn't have some of the negative things that are, I shouldn't say negative, but some of the more conflict-driven things that you might find in area control games that you don't like. This game has low combat area control. I like area control. I like it a lot, but I also like the fact that it's low combat. Your units aren't dying and being slaughtered. Yes, players will take control of areas from you. Players will get in their way, and it will be frustrating at times, but you don't have a faction of units dying and have to worry about respawning them and spending energy there. There's very, very little death in this game. There's only a few abilities and that one drone. You can play an entire game and have nobody die, and it wouldn't be that surprising. I would say a typical game probably has 2 or 3 deaths the entire game. There's not a lot going on there. And additionally, the game is additionally friendly in the sense that it lets you get things at the end of your turn. You are vying for things in this game, and control and positioning matter a ton. But it's not a winner-takes-all kind of situation where either you or I are getting those bases at the end. No, because I score the goals at the end of my turn, I can get the bases, but so can you. You might have to work harder because I'm already there, and now you have to spend more units to get there, so maybe you try to rethink a different plan, and you look at the goals, and you tactically redecide that it might be better to get 12 points this round, and a few points less next round, instead of trying to heavily focusing on the area that I'm trying to go for. There are different things going on in this game that just give you abilities that break the game, cards that break the game, the drones that break the game, every single thing, the map that completely changes the game. Every single time you play this game, you can position and build a new map, and every single time I've played the game, I have built a new map. The game gives you one like pre-constructed map, which by the way, one of my critiques is the fact that the game should really have given you like 4 or 5 pre-constructed maps for each, player count. They don't really do that. They give you a map over here. Great. That's not a problem. I've been reconfiguring and adjusting the map every single time I've played, and it has not impacted my enjoyment negatively at all. I have fun building the map and trying to make sure that there's reasons to go for one thing or the other. Even when you build this map here, where you have 2 of these on one side of the board, well, that gives players an incentive to walk over here and build bases, because this area of the board is going to be uncontested. Everything you do and build is built around the idea, though, that you're all playing on the same board, spawning out of the same initial camps, and so there is balance almost inherently. It's just a different puzzle as far as giving people and players a way to interact with that puzzle. The game works great at 2, 3, and 4 players. It works well at all player counts. 3 is my favorite. 2 is a little less going on in terms of players, but still works pretty decently. And 4 just kind of adds an unnecessary player that didn't enhance the experience, but still a good game. For me, 3 is the sweet spot, but it works at all those player counts. And then lastly, it also gives you lots of expansion content as well. Now, I can't review the expansion content yet, I haven't played any of it, but I've read the rules for a bunch of it, and it looks fun. It looks like more ways to add to the game, more factions, more ability tiles, which I'm really excited for, more ways of playing the game, like King of the Hill and solo mode and campaign and all those things. I may cover those in the future, I don't know, I have to dive into them one step at a time, but I'm very much enjoying all the various many things that lend itself to D.E.I. It is a ton of things that coalesce, powers, abilities, goals, asymmetric factions, a board that is ever-changing to constantly give you a new puzzle every single time you play this area control game. So what do I not like about the game? The main thing I don't like, let's cover 2 things. No, watch one thing. There's only one thing I don't really like about the game. Well, 2 things. There's the rulebook thing, where I mentioned already, where I don't love the fact that the rulebook doesn't have more maps set up. Now, I don't mind, I build my own, but it really should have more maps set up in the rulebook, or something you could have there, just more suggestions for players. The only real complaint I have in D.E.I., and this comes into play most at 4 players, not at all at 2, and a little bit at 3, is the fact that so much changes between turns that it almost doesn't make sense to bother planning on your turn at all, for the most part. I still do plan out, and I think through what I'm trying to go for and establish, and I'm like, I'm trying to get control of these blue bases here and this one over here, so I can lock in those extra bases and score 12 points on blue bases this round. I think through the general goals that I'm going for. But so much changes between rounds, and players are playing so much and moving around the board and taking control and getting in your way, that more often than not, when it gets to my turn, I'm like, I was going to play those 2 cards, but instead I'm going to play this card down, buy that card for the market, and change how I interact with the game state. It doesn't take that long. The AP, the analysis paralysis, to me, is not that bad in this game. I have a film gameplay, you can check that out. The games itself that we have had generally are in the 90-minute range. It's not that long of an experience, and so I don't mind it that much. But it is worth noting that more often than not, when I'm planning my turn, it comes back to my turn, and I pick something else to do instead because the game state has changed a lot. As far as I can see others not liking, there's a few different things. Many of them are the things that I enjoy. The low combat aspect, you might be looking for a heavier area control game with more conflict, and this won't have that. This is about the area control. This is more of an El Grande than a Blood Rage. This is not about murdering and killing. It's about positioning above all else. You might not like the fact that it's friendly and gives you stuff at the end of your turn that takes the bite away from the game. We're not really fighting, we're just operating together in the same area. Trust me, you are fighting. Trust me, you are competing with each other. But you might not love that, and so that's something that works for me, but might not work as much for you. The fact that the resources in this game are a limited pool. Everything you see on the board here, these are the resources you start with, and no more resources come into play past a few ability cards that are going to introduce more resources, and you might not like that. I like the slowly depleting the map, because the slow depletion of the map, because it makes the early game so important, and it makes the late game very interesting to see how players try to get those last few cards that they need, or the tokens they need, the resources they need, to drive their engine forward. And I'd say very, very much this game can be a game that, if you don't see the patterns of how you can get around the things in your way, it's not going to be a rewarding experience. There are a lot of things in your way in this game, primarily the elevation of the terrain and then large groupings of people that just stop you from moving. Both those things get in your way in the game, and they get in your way a lot as you play through this, and there's always ways around it. But if you can't find the cards, the patterns, the abilities that let you get around that let you achieve your objectives, you might find yourself with either an unsatisfying experience, or alternatively spending way too long to try to actually go ahead and look at the board and find those patterns. It's something that this game is very much about finding the patterns that the game presents you while it challenges you and gets in your way. And if you don't like that, it's not going to be for you. And then lastly, I would say that the tiles in this game, and I guess this should really go into things I don't like as well. The tiles in this game required assembly. This over here, this tile we have smack dab in the middle over here, this thing, you have to assemble these with multiple levels of various little stickers that have to be placed down in order to create the tile there. The game does not come assembled. You have to go through the process, and it was probably about a maybe 45-minute process of just assembling the board for the first time, and possibly even longer. I don't remember exactly how long it took, but it definitely was not a fun first setup. And I'd say more than the fact that it's 45 minutes, it's one of those things that gets in the way of playing the game the first time. If you get this game and you have to sticker the tiles, you might sit there and just not do so, and it might sit on your shelf and eventually be sold without getting played because there's an additional 45-minute barrier of entry to just playing the game. So it's not the end of the world, it's not a big deal, pop on a movie and do it, but it certainly is not the most fun, and most importantly, it can stop you from actually playing it. Which brings me to my final thoughts on this game. I adore this game. Like, straight up adore this game. This is a 5 out of 5 for me. It's an incredible experience that I love what it's doing because it leans into all the things I like. It's area control, which is not actually a genre I like, by the way, but it's a genre that if you add other things on top of it, it works really well. It's a great base for other things for me. Pure area control, not as much my jam. Area control with other elements, with powers and abilities, with clever card play, with interesting decisions, with asymmetric factions, with ability tiles and a changing board, that all to me is a puzzle. This is the kind of thing that gives me the puzzle that I enjoy seeing in other games. The other games, I talk about this all the time with many games, where I like seeing the patterns, in games like Vindication or games like Rurik Dawn of Kiev, any of these game systems where it's all about trying to find the patterns on the table. This game gives me that in spades. I've enjoyed every single play of this game, each one more than the last. I've enjoyed finding the intricacies of learning how to maneuver amongst the winter terrain and the multiple elevations in the game. I love everything that's going on here. I have not dived into the expansion of the solo mode of the campaign, but I will be. This is one of my new favorite games, not even a question. It is a genre that I like, and it does so incredibly well to the types of elements in gameplay that I like. It's a straight up 5 out of 5. I am loving Divide at Impera from Ludus Magnus Studios, and I am really excited to dive into all the additional content I have. It's a good game. It's a really good game. I'm liking it a lot. This is going into my top area control games. A list that I have Blood Rage and Cyclades and Inish and Rurik and Kemet and a few others maybe that I'm not remembering right now. But there's a handful of area control games that are really up there, my top games, and this is very much entering that echelon of games for me. Speaking of which, as far as other recommendations, the first one I'll say is Rurik Dawn of Kiev, which I mentioned already. This game very much has the same feeling as far as trying to figure out how to mess with your opponents in a game that has combat but is low combat, but is much more about achieving goals in area control. This is gives me very similar vibes to Rurik Dawn of Kiev. Then if you're just looking for pure area control, El Grande in general is going to be a great grandfather of area control games that continues to deliver and continues to be an amazing experience. And then lastly, Vindication. Again, but seeing those patterns being presented with a ton of information, not in area control, but in a very different engine. But those 3 games, all of them gave me elements of this in D.E.I. Divide at Impera. I hope you've enjoyed this video. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. And feel free to stick around because there's I did one thing over here, which I probably should have put in what I can see others not liking, because I made a big deal about it. But basically, setup time. some people have complained about setup time. So I did a full little setup time video that you can check out now. So I'm going to say goodbye, but you can see past Alex right about now. So I'm going to start this review off by filming something that's actually going at the end of this review, which means if you made it this far, congratulations. Thanks for sitting through the entire review. I hope you like this game if or when you play it. The reason this is going at the end of the review is you're going to watch me now set up the game. That's what I'm going to do. And the reason I'm doing that is because of the fact that I've seen people complain that the setup could be too long or it just took forever. And that's something that our game group experienced the first time as well. But since then, I think it goes reasonably fast. So you're going to watch me set up the game, but not just set it up, but set it up and construct a new map for the first time. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit through and puzzle through a new map, which I like doing when I play this game. I like creating new maps. And we're going to go ahead and start the timer and see, start to finish, how long it takes to open the box and how long it takes to get you up and ready. Or you can just check the timestamp, jump around, figure it all out. But with that, we're going to start the timer and get D.E.I set up for you. This box is going to go off to the side. I will, of course, keep up the entertaining chatter, because why would I not? But the first thing you're going to want to do, you're going to want to grab these tiles over here. To that end, we're going to go ahead and grab some tiles. Let's grab all these out of the box. These have to be set up with specific configuration based on specific player counts. So I need to check, here are 4+ tiles. And none of this was set up in any, this is all, for the record, this is the first time the box is being opened since the last time I played it. So this is there's no prefabricated anything here. I got my tiles, I got this, time to set up the board. Now I might have to do some adjustments after for the actual video conversation, but let's go ahead and get this up and running. We have one of our initial areas over here, so it's going to go over here. I'm going to toss this over here like so. Now the game does have some specific rules as far as the best way to set things up in different ways, but I'm going to go ahead and follow the way I would typically set this up in my own puzzle. So we have a nice little basin over here, which I think we can work with, but if we're going to do that way, then I want to try to, again, this goes back to the puzzly nature of things. I want to grab some tiles over here. We're going to put this into here, so it's a little bit more of a, we got a base over there. We're going to make sure that we got some reasons for people to travel around the map as we go. So we're going to try to, let's zoom the camera out. Keep in mind this is going against our setup time, but we'll deal with it. There we go. Setup, we got the camera a bit zoomed out, and now we are going to start putting this in play. Now again, you want to keep in mind where the elevators are and whether that will lend itself to a nice cohesive map structure. So I think we do want to throw the other basin area down here, because this, nope, where is the other basin area? It's over here. See, I want players, I think I'm actually going to toss this down into the corner over here. So we're going to have a very different setup as far as how these are going together. I'm going to toss this into here so players can go straight into here and pop up there, which I think gives you an incentive to wander around. We have this little area here that we're going to leave cut off. So now we have a small little puzzle area where players can try to get to those bases, which will matter. I like giving thought as far as, am I making this an interesting challenge as far as setting it up? So players can wander down here, they can wander over here, they can get up over here pretty quickly. So all of that I'm pretty happy with so far. We just need to make sure that there's enough bases on the other part of the map. This might have been a bit too ambitious. You see, I put too many things here, but I guess it doesn't really matter that much. Although I might reconfigure this a drop, putting this into here instead. That might work. It doesn't really give me a strong reason as far as why you'd go here, though, which I don't love, but we can still work with that. And because I just want to have more of the things going on as far as this second part of the map. So we're going to pop this over here, like so. I think that works as far as getting a reason why players are going to be showing up over here. Oh, I have 2 more of these. That's why I couldn't figure out where my bases were. Because then, and one of these is going to be the 4-player one, which I don't know which one it is, so we're going to go ahead and put the other one back. One of these is secretly for the 4-player, but I think this gives enough of a reason to wander around the map in different ways. From there, we're going to go ahead and grab our resources. So, grabbing our resources, this is just dumping resources onto the board and just dumping them into the various areas we have. So this just involves grabbing, and this is all one player, by the way. Generally, I start setting up the map, and then I have other players going through the process of putting these guys out, these little purple things. There's a few ways. This will go faster as you actually know what you're doing. We got resources, and we're trying to find the small little pips where these will go. I'm going to grab these. And again, this is not me going any particular faster than normal. I would say that add another like minute and a half if I weren't filming this, because I think I would have spent a lot more time trying to come up with the optimal map, which to me is part of the fun. It's not the game fun, obviously, but it is fun to set up an ideal map and an ideal experience for the players. So we're going to have these 2 over here. That's going to pop over there. Great. Okay. Now, as far as any other resources we got 2 over here. These are all going on the upper levels. We got 1 over here. We got 1 over here. And I think that's what we got as far as those top levels, which means now we get to do all the bottom level ones. We're going to pop these into just little zones down here where we have these. Just wherever you see the dots is where they go. And then the bases, now the bases do, strictly speaking, have certain numbers on them. I don't follow those numbers because once I'm setting up my own map, my goal is a distribution that lends itself to interesting gameplay decisions. And you'll see what I mean there shortly. I like how we have a little small resource with a ton of resources over there. I appreciate that as far as just having a little repertoire of just tons of resources in a small area, 2 small areas. This little base is actually fairly resource heavy. I kind of like the way this is set up. We have a resource heavy base without the actual bases around. Resource heavy starting area. So it's different reasons to go to different areas, which is what I like when I'm setting up a map. We got 2 over here, 1, 2. We need bag 2 over here. We need another one over there, and I think we're good on the resources. So 1 more here, and then the resources here. Okay, so that's this over here. Done. We're done with that part. On to the bases. We got the base tiles over here. Putting these out. Now we should need 1, but I set up for a 3-player game, which by the way is my favorite way to play this so far, which means we're going to toss 1 base of each back into the box. We have our candy tokens, which we'll deal with shortly. Now, I'm not going to worry too much with the camera view as far as setting up. I've ordered a bit of just to make sure you have some degree of, well, something when I set it up. I don't want to worry about it extensively. We're going to put our candy boost tokens down here. Make sure again, 1 player can turn these over. You don't have to be having a single player do all of it. This game is like, I mean, I'm guessing this is going to be around a 7 to 10 minute setup total. And I think you can cut that down to like 6 minutes or 7 minutes if you're doing it with 2 players. Because by now, the same way I would have been doing this the entire time, someone else could have been setting up the cards. Now let's go ahead and create interesting paradigms. So I like having a reason. Players now want to jump to the double color area over here. And then this double color I don't think is nearly as intriguing. But what if we give them a... that's a little harder. What if we do a red and a red? So you have to work to get to those. But then from there we'll branch up the colors a little bit more distributed. Again, this goes to where I do like having some degree of interesting puzzle as far as why players are going for different areas. We're going to have to... I could put this down here. I'm going to pop this up here and make them work for that other blue. The green over there. And I think we might be missing one because I did choose that wrong tile. So we're going to go ahead and put this back, I think. Okay, great. So we're done over there with the bases, which means now it's time for, we got these. We're going to have factions. Factions set up over here. These players can all do themselves. I'm not going to heavily worry about it. We're going to grab the 3 drones, put them out over here. And again, there's a little bit of a distribution as far as how you actually... I did take the wrong tile. See, one of these is not supposed to be there. There's supposed to be 1 more base tile here. This one might... I'm not going to do this right now. You know what? I'm going to do it. I want the accuracy. I want the accuracy. So I'm going to go ahead and... No, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm not. But strictly speaking, I took 1 more of those crossroad pieces when I shouldn't have. So we're going to put the drones in play. We got the drones. We got the factions. We need our small little player boards, which are going to be over here. These are going to be your sideboards that are going to go down over here. So let's move the box to the side a bit. I'm going to grab this. And these all go... I'm going to have to figure out how to put this so it fits on camera, which I told you I'm not going to do. But whatever. I lied. It happens. We have the card markets here. And let's say we'll have another card market on this side over here. That way when I film it later, because you're watching this all before I film it, which is fun. Then we also have this over here, which I can leave off to the side. You don't really need that in play. And that is basically that. Past that, we have the this situation, which again, I can leave off to the side. We're going to leave those off to the side a bit. You can't really see them as well. Then we have the individual player screens over here. We don't need these. We do need the player cards of these over here. So we're going to have a 3-player game, which means that can go off to the side. These can go over here. And I'm not going to worry about the individual player setup. Honestly, players can do that on their own time. That much like I can make them do. What I do need is I do need the cards. So I'm going to have to put this a bit and grab all the cards, which weren't actually put away properly. I mean, they were put away properly-ish. So here's the card aspect over here. We're going to grab these cards. We have our goal cards. That will go on our goal board in a second. We have our individual market cards, which we need from these. So here. We got these cards over here. We're going to have the plain market. We're going to have the red market. We're going to have the other market. Now, I will say something I'm not going to bother doing. Maybe I'll do it. Fine, we're going to do it. We're going to go ahead and shuffle in 1, 1, and 1. And shuffle in 1, 1, and 1. And shuffle in 1, 1, and 1. That's basically putting into play the what's it called? The resources, which means technically speaking, we don't have this drone, but we have that drone. And then we're going to go ahead and give players the individual cards for their own factions, which we'll do separately because I'm not going to worry about that right now. So these cards get shuffled over here, and they create the card markets for the various areas. This one is the blue card market, which is over here. So we're going to go over here. We're going to put out some cards. We put out 1, 2, and 3. That's the cards we have there. This card's market's going to get shuffled. Oh, look at that. I have my daughter coming home. So she can go ahead. I'll just say hi to her because why not? Hey, Ricky. I am filming, but not actually. Like, I'm kind of interrupting it, so feel free to do whatever. I'm going to put this card down here, this card here, this card here. Oh, look, we got a drone in play. And we have this market over here. That's going to be the red card market. And we're going to go ahead and put that into play. And in a minute, I'll film my actual review of D.E.I. because that's the actual point here. This, by the way, if it helps, this is part of the process that goes into every review, actually setting up a game. So I'm going to spend 10 minutes setting up the game and 10 minutes tearing down the game in order to film the review. So whenever, like, one thing that people don't talk about a lot, you hear it occasionally from content creators, just how much time actually goes into a review. You have to play the game. I've played this game 5 times, I want to say, for this review. I think 5 times. I've played this game 5 times so far. I'll be playing it more, by the way, but I figured 5's good enough for a review. I'm okay with that. Then, from there, we also have the drafting the notes, setting up the game, tearing down the game, the review itself, editing the video, all that. Practically speaking, to review a game like D.E.I, don't get me wrong, the 5 plays was fun. By the way, we're at 9 minutes and 30 seconds, I'm going to call that. You could set up these over here, but if the players aren't setting up their own freaking boards, they're not at my table. And I could add 2 minutes. If I was setting up everyone's individual things, that could add 2 minutes to the game. I can live with that. But we're going to go and put these over here. Put that off to the side. These are the individual cards from a faction, which we'll go ahead and place down. But anyways, what I was saying is, yeah, so we got 9 minutes and 30 seconds over here on the clock, which you can check out over there. 9 minutes and 30 seconds. And we're going to go ahead and play, at this point, just do the actual review itself. But yeah, like I said, it's a lot of time goes into reviews. People don't always realize just how much goes in. You're talking about counting all the plays, 5 plays, an average of 92 minutes, 2 hours a pop. That's 10 hours right there, a little less, but also setup and all that stuff. So 10 hours right there, plus filming the review, plus everything else. So around 12 to 13 hours so that I can review D.E.I. Now again, the 5 plays were fun, I'm not complaining. But it's less fun when you're reviewing a game. There are many games, and I won't give a game 5 plays. I've talked about this in other videos. I will not give a game 5 plays if I don't like it. If I don't like it, it gets 2 or 3 plays. I just don't feel the need. And if I really don't like it, it gets no plays and no review, which is one of the reasons you don't see negative reviews, because it's harder to get behind mentally. Yeah, sure, let me commit tons of time to reviewing that game I don't care about, to playing the game I don't care about. But also, nobody wants to put out a review of a game they played once, because you reasonably get flack for that. So, yeah, it's a complicated conversation. But, thanks for making it so far into this video. Also, I'm sorry if I scared you away with the time of the video, because some of you watched this video and thought, hey, this video is longer than it actually is, which it isn't. Also, I forgot to set up the little cubes here, so add another 30 seconds if you want. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and call it now. I'm going to do the setup over here of this game, and we're going to go back to the review. Thanks so much to, well, not back to the review. I'm going to review the game now. You are going to wrap it up because you're watching the end of the video, and for me, it's about to start. So what I think I'm going to do, because I think it only makes sense, is I'm just going to keep this running so I can go straight into it. And so this way you can watch the, you can have Inception, have the beginning and the end of the video as you go through it. Where are my other tokens? Yeah, I think I have to keep this video going now, because this way you can go straight into the review, which means you get to see me get up from my seat to tape the printed notes. Where are my cubes? Here we go. I'm going to be taping printed notes to my camera. Not taping, I just kind of wedge it in there. It works, honestly. Don't worry about it, I got it. What I don't have is the, I don't have some of my cubes here. I'm missing some of these little cubies that are very, very important. Who took my little cubies? This goes here, that goes there. Are they in a faction bag somewhere? Did someone put them into the wrong bag? Oh, here we go. Here are the cubes. We're good. Okay, we're good. Now we're just adding time at this point. Okay, so we got that one needs a blue one here, and then this one needs a red one here. And then I'm going to go ahead and get up, put this off to the side. I'll put this to the floor so that no one knows it exists. Because honestly, most of the time when I'm doing these, I kind of just have the empty box, which I'm sure you've realized by now. Let me go tape the thing to the camera, and I'll be right with you. So we're going to go up. I'm going to remind you that I'm still here by talking out loud, because why not? We're going to take this giant sheet of notes over here. It's just bullet points. It's like the individual bullet points that I talk about as we go. That gets taped to the camera. Not taped. And then we're going to Inception this review. So I'm going to start this off. There might be a few false starts. That does happen as I go through it. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this behind the scenes look as to D.E.I. Takes around 10 minutes to set up, and that's doing it alone. I genuinely believe if you have 2 people who know how to play, and that's with setting up a map. That's just me setting up a map as opposed to trying to follow theirs and trying to be mindful. I think if you have 2 people who know the game, it sets up in 6 minutes. I genuinely. Anyways, let's get ready. Mentally prep myself. 3, 2, 1. Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing D.E.I. Divide at Impera from Ludus Magnus Studios. Fun fact, this part you don't really know necessarily, but normally I do a splash screen here, which you probably saw at the beginning of the video, and usually I just do the whole thing I just did, and I just hold the box here, and then I just leave the splash screen. So like, for example, just to give you an idea of how things change or pivot, I'm going to move this over here, okay, and then I'm going to pull this back down. And you'll have never noticed. That's just the way, what do we pay attention to does. But now you'll go back to the beginning of the video and see that part, and so enjoy. D.E.I. is an area control game for 1 to 4 players.